folks, I'm the Lost Mapper, and today is day 9 of the 30-day map challenge, and the theme today is hexagons. This is something I've never worked with before, so it was a bit of a learning experience, and hopefully that will translate well for you. So for this map, what I'm looking to do is make a hexagon map of so originally it was going to be the national parks across the United States, but as I was prepping for this, I realized that the data I was using was not quite that. So it's going to be a hexagon map of national monuments and sites throughout the US. So I'm going to head over to Natural Earth, click on Get Data. I'm going to go down to Cultural inside of the Large Scale section. And I'm going to download countries just so I can have a shape of the US underneath my map. And then I'm going to scroll down to the bottom where I get to parks and protected lands. And I'm going to download this US National Parks layer. And I've got those two folders, which I'm going to take out of my downloads folder and move into my project. Then over in QGIS, I've got a project started already, and I'm going to head into my project home and grab those two layers. So I've got the country shape, and I'm going to zoom in on the US here, North America, sorry, Alaska. I'm actually going to change the coordinate reference system to 3857, just so it fits a little bit better in the rectangle. And then I'm going to open up the parks and protected lands, and there's a bunch of different files in here, including areas, lines, and points. And points was what I was interested in. Something I realized as I was prepping this and reviewing, that the areas don't necessarily line up to where the points are. There's plenty of places where there's an area, a shape, but no point. And if I go back to the Parks and Protected Lands file here, and I click on About, I can see that they kind of split up. So park units over 100,000 acres are areas, and park units under 100,000 acres are points. And then there's a bunch of other stuff. So I suppose I could turn those park units over 100,000 acres into points using their centroids, but I think I'm just going to keep it simple and just look at these park units. So if we go back into QGIS and we look at these points, we can see that there's a unit type, and some of them are parks. Some of them are memorials. Some of them are battlefield parks, historic sites, historical parks. I'm going to take a subset of those, basically filtering out. I'm going to stick to things that are sort of represented by a single point rather than a large area. So I'm going to right click on that layer and choose filter. And I'm going to choose unit type. I'm going to look at all the values there. And I'm going to use this in expression, which allows you to actually provide a list of values, not just a single one. So like, I'm not going to just say is unit type memorial. I'm actually going to use a collection of them. So I'm going to say if it's a memorial, or, and I put a comma in here, if it is a historic site, and another comma here, and if it's a national memorial, and if it's a national monument. And I don't think I'm going to worry about these other ones since they're more areas rather than a specific point. And we should make sure to reflect that in the title of our map. So this is National Memorials, Monuments, and Historic Sites. So I'm going to click test on that, and I've got 178 rows. Cool. And I'm going to remove that area layer since that was only to explain that point. And I'm going to change the countries to just be filled in with white, since that's not really the focus. And I'm going to go up to project properties, and I'm going to change the background to be blue for our sort of fake ocean. Okay. And so this is sort of the main part of this. What we want to do is create a grid of hexagons, and then we want to basically inform those hexagons based on what's inside of them. So we're going to look at how many of these points are inside of each hexagon, and that will sort of summarize that area rather than looking at a bunch of different points. So to start, I'm going to go up to Vector and Research Tools and Create Grid. And the first thing I want to do is I want to make sure I choose hexagon. I always forget to actually choose hexagon. The grid extent, we're going to use the current map canvas. So we can click this button. All right, I think we're actually going to use kilometers. And I'm going to do 500 kilometers for both horizontal and vertical. I'm not worried about the other options. And for now, I'm just going to make a temporary layer so we can see how it looks. And then if we like it, we can save it. Okay. And it's made a bunch of hexagons filling up the extent that we were looking at. And what I'm going to do is change the symbology of that grid and make the fill style no brush. So that will allow me to see through it. And now I can see how many points are inside of each hex. So then to actually calculate how many points are inside of each hex, you're going to go up to Vector and Analysis, Count Points in Polygon. And we're going to choose the polygon layer as our grid. The points layer is going to be our parks and protected land points, which is now also filtered. In this case, I'm not worried about a weight field or a class field. And if you want, you can always customize the count field that's coming out. So it's going to generate a new layer. They're going to be hexagons, and each one is going to have an attribute called num points, which is the number of points inside of that hex. And again, just using a temporary layer. Cool. So now we have yet another grid. If we click on that one and press F6 to look at the attributes, we can then see that they have a number of points inside of them. Let's scroll up here to the top. So that's how many are inside each. So it'd be nice to visualize that in a couple ways. So first, let's visualize it by just adding a label, a single label, and we're going to use num points. I'm going to change the size of this to 24 point and bold, and also draw a buffer around it. And now I've got a bunch of hexagons with numbers in it. All these zeros are probably not particularly helpful, so I think I'm going to filter those out. So right-clicking on the layer, I'm going to choose Filter, and num points is greater than 0. Test that out. I've got 54. And now it's filtering out the ones that do not have values in them. And let's even shut off the initial grid. And now we're only seeing hexagons over the United States that have a number of these monuments and memorials greater than 1. And then we can also make it even snazzier by changing the symbology of that layer. I'm going to change it to graduated. Going to use that number of points. I'm going to change the color ramp to greens. And again, I'm no math expert. I found that the most interesting one was to use natural breaks and 10 of them, classify, and I've now actually this maybe we'll use a slightly smaller number because I'm seeing I'm getting 1 multiple times. What about 7? 1, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 5. All right. I think that looks all right. What does 6 get me? No. All right. Great. And then if I hit OK on that, I've now got these hexagons both labeled and colored based on the number of monuments and memorials and sites inside of them. So that was a quick example of how to do a hexagon map inside of QGIS. I think the focus here is more on the mechanical side of it, of which features you're using to do it. I suggest doing some Googling and reading to find out the best way to use the different modes for the symbology in order to ensure that you are communicating the right information and communicating it correctly. That's it for today, and I'll see you tomorrow.